Before we get into this week's episode of the Retro Monster Truck Review, I would like to have a moment of silence here for Mr. Les Anderson, who passed away recently. That was Dennis Anderson's brother. This episode was recorded before we knew of Les's passing, so we didn't have anything put on the episode as far as that goes. But here at the beginning of it, I wanted to take a moment, just have a moment of silence for Les, and send our thoughts and prayers out to the Anderson family. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the show. This week on the Retro Monster Truck Review, we go back to the year 2008 and to one of the shows that I personally attended, and it's one of my favorite shows that I ever attended as far as Monster Jam goes. St. Louis Monster Jam 2008, here on this week's episode of the Retro Monster Truck Review. We're back again, ladies and gentlemen, this time for a hometown show for me, the Edward Jones Dome, February 2008. Monster Jam invaded the St. Louis area, and I got to tell you, Matt, this 10-truck lineup was a feld-stacked lineup, but it was all the heavy hitters for Monster Jam at the time.
For sure, man. We've got some of the best in the business here in the Edward Jones Dome, as it's known at the time.
Yep, not the Dome at America Center like it is now. This was the Edward Jones Dome, and it's still to this day one of the coolest and biggest and just fun facilities that you can go to. I know the NFL isn't there anymore, but it's still a great facility to go watch a monster truck show at. I believe they had held the XFL in there before the pandemic had started as well, and St. Louis was really happy to have a football team in there. But I got to tell you, this is a big floor, second only, if I remember correctly, to the Superdome in New Orleans.
It's huge. They've got a lot of room here in St. Louis. You know, this dome was originally the Trans World Dome for TWA Airlines, and it was built from 1992 to 1995. They just decided, you know what, we're going to build a big stadium and hopefully an NFL team will come here, because that's how we did things in the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. They built a big stadium and they attracted the Rams.
Well, they were trying to get, I think, the Patriots at one point. They were going to move to St. Louis. Something happened with it. And what ended up happening was that the LA Rams relocate to St. Louis for the 95 season. They play their first 4 home games at Busch Stadium, because the dome wasn't ready yet. They move in. They do 20 years in St. Louis before moving back to LA, because there was some contractual stuff saying that the dome had to be within the top quartile in terms of fan amenities for the NFL. And within the first 10 years, it was already out of the first quartile, and the renovation plans and everything got canceled. They didn't, pass the public due diligence, I guess, or whatever referendums they had. They didn't vote for them. They didn't get the tax money, is what I'm saying, to redo the stadium. So out go the Rams. And now we've got the Gateway Dirt Nationals at the stadium, which is pretty cool. We got indoor dirt late model racing. Pretty cool thing that we have here during the winter time. It's kind of a jack of all trades building now, where they don't have a permanent tenant necessarily, but they do a lot of cool stuff.
Yep, that is exactly correct on everything you just said right there. They did bring a Super Bowl to St. Louis. We will say that. The Rams, at the time when they were the St. Louis Rams, won a Super Bowl. Kurt Warner, the quarterback, of course. He has a movie coming out, I believe, too, soon. So go find that, Google it, check it out. It's a good little story for Kurt Warner right there, a guy that worked really hard to get a championship on his ring finger. He certainly got that in St. Louis. But we're not here to talk about football. We're not here to talk about any other sport. We're here to talk about monster trucks inside the Edward Jones Dome. And this show is arguably at least around us, as far as the St. Louis people that have been to this show, or the St. Louis area people, this show is still the most well-remembered show here. And I'll give you 2 words as to why. Double bus.
It is a big obstacle, and we're going to get to that in freestyle. And, we're here in 2008. It's February 16th. I was probably hanging out in Pittsburgh at the Civic Arena at this point. It was probably that weekend with Randy Brown and all the other guys upset about how badly the event manager was running that weekend. I won't say his name out loud, but it was a rough weekend for everybody. We almost didn't have a club crew the next year because it was a rough go that year in Pittsburgh. But we've got, we're a couple years into the Speed contract now. It's a established brand on Speed Channel. Monster Jam's doing well in the ratings.
I believe, just to touch on that, I believe this is the second highest rated show on Speed at the moment in time, only behind NASCAR coverage.
Right. I mean, it was a big deal. It had good time slot, and Monster Jam was really getting to its absolute zenith at this point. We've got Scott Douglas, our host, and our color commentator. Mark Schrader is in the analyst role, and we've got Shara Farbesh in the pit reporter role by this time.
I'm glad you knew her last name because I couldn't find it at all. All I knew was Shara. Our truck lineup here, as well as driver lineup. Reigning, defending world champion.
I'm Batman.
John Seesock. As a Batman fan, I was very happy that it won a world championship. Extremely happy for John Seesock as well, and his crew chief, Cody Saucier, here at the time. We see Cody at the beginning of this show in the background as they're interviewing John. He's working on the truck. He's tightening up a few things. Blue Thunder, Tony Farrell, the next one we'll introduce right here. Rest in peace to Tony Farrell, by the way. He lost his life in a drunk driving accident in 2015. He was struck by a drunk driver. One of the more talented guys in monster truck history. Started out, obviously, with the Blue Ribbon Bandit, worked his way up into owning the Wild Thing machine. And who doesn't love driving around a giant skull? I mean, come on.
That's right.
Tony Farrell, Blue Thunder. Here, he's probably got arguably the best ride of his career in the Blue Thunder machine. Bounty Hunter, Jimmy Creighton, at this time is a world freestyle champion. Who'd he beat? Blue Thunder and Tony Farrell in a tiebreaker the very following year, if I remember correctly, after they had the big tie debacle in Vegas. They had the tiebreaker the next year with Jimmy Creighton getting the win, and he was your 2005 freestyle champion. Lupe Sosa, El Toro Loco right here, another guy that's been around the industry off and on for a number of years, getting, at time, probably his best ride that he ever had within the sport, and that's the El Toro Loco machine. It's what people obviously remember Lupe with the most. Escalade, George Belhan, a truck that, honestly, when I first heard about it, thought this will never work as far as monster trucks go, and I have been proven wrong. This is stuck around as now the Mohawk Warrior truck. George's face is still on the side of this thing right here. George, at this time, Matt, is one of the guys that people were pegging to be a future and a dominant world champion. A lot of people thought George had quite a bit of driving talent.
Yeah, but he didn't, so...
Oh, no, you can't say that. George was one of my favorite guys to hang out with in the back. I loved talking to George. It was at this show he explained that he actually would run back between interviews and stuff product in his hair to keep the mohawk up, even after he took the helmet down. So, the man put a lot into that character.
Yeah, I never had a chance to meet George personally. I'll be honest, I hated the whole gimmick. I hated his gimmick in Blue Thunder where he had like the attitude thing going. I didn't like the Mohawk Warrior thing. I still don't like the truck. I thought the Escalade was dumb. It just doesn't work for me. I don't know why, but
honestly, Escalade
it seemed hokey to me, I guess. I don't know.
The truck Escalade to me didn't work, but it did draw in another type of audience to monster trucks. It put another set of eyes on the sport, and George is famous in just having this seat right here. Obviously, his face is still on the side of the truck. They never changed the wrap. So
it was successful in what it was set out to do, and that's why they do it. We're not the only people that they're marketing this show to. That's why they kept Carolina Crusher around for people like us.
Exactly.
They got to reach out to all the different, clientele and all the demographics, and I certainly understand why it's there. Again, wasn't for me. Not my cup of tea. I'm a gravedigger guy and, bounty hunter and all the rest, Blue Thunder. But, hey, everybody's got an equal shot in the show. And we start the show here with Scott
we
Douglas.
Still got some trucks to introduce, though.
Well,
we got Gravedigger with Dennis Anderson, at this time 3-time world champion, 2-time racing champion, and the freestyle champion in 2000. Right below him, 7-time champion Tom Mintz and Maximum Destruction. And to this point, Matt, he had lost only one competition in St. Louis from 2004 to 2008, and the guy that beat him was Jimmy Creighton and Bounty Hunter in racing at one point, I believe in 2006, 2 years before this show. Candace Jolly comes out Monster Mutt Dalmatian right here. I believe this is her first or second year behind the wheel. She's still very green behind the wheel, but she does a pretty good job. She has a good showing here in St. Louis. Scarlet Bandit and Dawn Creighton. And the guy that I saved for last right here is actually somebody that just, I never really thought he got a good shake on television. And that's Team Suzuki with Bobby Parr behind the wheel. For those that don't know, Bobby Parr is a Pikes Peak world record holder for climbing the Pikes Peak, which is a 4,600-foot elevation change, around 12.35 miles. He did this on an LSR Banshee quad in 12 minutes, 9 seconds.
That's a lot of speed without a cage around you.
That's booking it.
I mean, you're shaking hands with danger on that for sure, going to that elevation. Bobby is a pro quad racer and also known for his time as, one of the main national touring guys with championship quad wars as part of Monster Jam. So a good performer, obviously, as well as a true competitor. He's got the total package in terms of being behind the wheel of a motorized vehicle. And, he kind of grew through the company along with Dan Allen, who was a quad racer, George Balhan, who we mentioned before. A bunch of those guys came through those ranks and ended up in different positions within the company.
Yep, exactly. Bobby Parr, I get to talk with him just a couple of times. He actually did remember me. I talked to him twice. First time I talked to him, we were just kind of BSing back and forth. And he goes, the reason that I actually accepted the ride with Monster Jam is because of the Suzuki sponsorship. I wanted something that was me. And to him, he's got a giant ATV on the side of this truck. Of course, that's Bobby Parr to a T right there. The guy loves the ATV and the off-road machinery that he just enjoys driving on. So that's why he took that ride. And there's a reason that Bobby Parr was in Suzuki. And then when that sponsorship went away, he was out of the sport of monster truck racing because he wanted something that was fit to him. And he got it. He got exactly what he wanted right here.
Yeah, I mean, it fit his image well and his history. Now, Josh, question for you. Were you at this event?
Yes, I was. I was at this event. I actually sat second deck above the tunnel at this one.
Well, you were one of the lucky ones because this event, they're turning people away at the door, sold out Edward Jones Dome. They've got people packed to the rafters as we join the show with Scott Douglas in the lobby with a bunch of fans explaining the place is sold out, no tickets available. And the reason why, this is the first time in multiple years that we've got Tom and Dennis together here in St. Louis.
Yep, it is. I was actually at every single St. Louis show up until 2020. So from 2004 on, I was at these shows. That's why I can remember a lot about this venue. Sometimes the years run together, but man, every single show in St. Louis has always got something a little bit special to it. This show, obviously, we're going to get into all of that. But up to this point, this is the first time Dennis and Tom have been in this building together in a while. Tom has dominated this building in the last 4 years. Like I said, the only guy that holds any kind of victory other than Tom here is Jimmy Creighton in those 4 years. 2004 was a show I wish they would have aired, and if I remember correctly, it was that show, then it was Dennis and Tom the next year, 2006. It was Randy Brown, I believe, in Gravedigger. They hadn't been together in quite some time in the St. Louis area, at least 2 years, to my knowledge. And then also, they had not been together very much in this season, Matt. This was the first time in a while Dennis had been on television. He'd been doing a lot of West Coast shows, and the reason why is Dennis simply says, hey, there were a lot of fans that were writing into Monster Jam wanting me to come out on the West Coast. Hadn't been in that area in about 10 years, so we packed up and we headed out there.
It's because my fans have emailed in, fan mail flooding in. They wanted to see me back out on the West Coast. So I went to Anaheim, went to San Diego, Phoenix, Arizona, hit all the spots I haven't been in probably over 10 years.
For sure, and it's a credit to Dennis that he always wanted to make sure that his fans were taken care of. Even though the needs are there to have him on TV, he's the superstar. He says, I got to go see the people I haven't seen in a while. And his whole 25th anniversary tour was largely based on the same concept where he wanted to go to markets that he hadn't been in a while. And, unfortunately, he ends up getting injured early enough in the season, and Adam ends up driving the truck pretty much the whole first quarter. But they came to Pittsburgh. They went to a lot of small markets, small arenas that Dennis hadn't been in since the 90s. And Dennis always wanted to make sure that the people got a chance, or at least they knew that he may pop into their town every now and then, make sure that they weren't going to miss that show.
Exactly. Our track right here that we had was probably the biggest and widest Chicago style that you were ever going to see. And they did this a couple of years in St. Louis, this big, wide Chicago style. And there's so many turn poles here. You could almost have a rental company right there in between them if you wanted to. I mean, there's like 6 poles, I think, on the outside of each corner, which usually for Monster Jam, you would see 3 at best. Here is just such a wide corner. They wanted to incorporate some more penalties, I guess, for you. So these guys are taking these corners really tight right here. And as you like to say, they're flirting with and playing with danger around every corner right here of a penalty.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many opportunities for a penalty, and we're coming around these wide sweeping corners. To me, it sounds like a Mentz type of track. He likes to ride that rear steer hanging out and then just, kind of direct the truck with the front end as we're going through high speed corners. But the question is the dirt going to be loose enough to make that strategy work? And we'll see how that plays out as we get through the brackets here in St. Louis. We see the field of trucks being introduced that we've talked about here during the intros. And at this time in Monster Jam, intros were a whole production in themselves. Brian Welsh, was in charge of the production for this stadium tour. And we've got trucks doing full laps around the arena, jumping over obstacles. And we've got Pyro, the flag coming out with Digger and Max D parked on top of that double bus stack.
Yep, and the interesting thing to point out right here, a lot of people probably don't know this, but I talked to Cody Saucier yesterday, sent him a couple of text messages back and forth, said, hey, we're going to cover St. Louis 2008 on the show, and he started telling me about, obviously, what we're going to get into later with a certain blue truck, and he started telling me, too, that it was one of the first times he really got to open up a monster truck, and I'm like, how did you get to do that? A lot of the crew guys actually drove the trucks and introductions right here, other than Dennis and Tom. Tom, of course, and Max D, Digger, obviously with Dennis. The other trucks, aside from Bounty Hunter and Scarlet Bandit, were felled crew chiefs that were driving these trucks out here. Cody obviously drove Batman around in intros.
That's some good stuff. Stuff that you only get to know here on the Retro Monster Truck Review. We got to keep the people tuning in for some reason. We've got the exclusives.
We get a rare thing here that we didn't really ever get to see in the early years of Speed that we did here in the later years of Speed. This is the racing only show right here. We're actually going to get to see all of qualifying. We're going to see all the qualifying times, the ETs, everything. Then we're going to go into the racing bracket, and we've got an hour-long show dedicated to just the racing bracket. For the love of God, please bring this back.
Yeah, and we go into this racing with Shara down with Bobby Parr on the floor, and we get a cool, track X and an explanation of how this track's going to work and what the critical points are for the drivers.
Yeah, when you see the red light go off, it's time to go is the first thing that stuck out to me when Bobby Parr says out there. He says one of his keys is to just wait for the red light to go out, because at that point the green light's on and you can go. He talks about as well as how he comes into the stadium sometimes beforehand, before the show, before the pit party, everything, and just walks the track and kind of picks out angles and everything. And that's something that we haven't talked about much on this show, but it's something that drivers do all the time. And when they're picking out angles, they're not necessarily looking down at the dirt by doing so. They're looking for lines of sight out there along the arena floor, along the stadium floor. So they know, hey, if I'm getting close to this is my turn-in point.
And they're going to need to know where they need to hit their marks in this track. As we talked about, big, wide sweeping corners. It was not a typical setup for these guys. It was a little bit foreign to them, and they needed to make sure they got a good look at this track. If you go and try to sling that truck into a normal turn, you're going to, be inside of about 3 of the 5 turning poles that you're expecting. So we're got a little bit different setup. It's traditional in the sense that it's 3 hits on the set of cars in Chicago style, which does not belong in stadiums. But
this one I'll agree with to you. Minneapolis 03, I like that one. That was nice and tight. Here, it's giant. This floor is so big. You cannot tell who's winning races from the stands. You have to watch the replay that they have. It's just impossible.
You know what kind of track they should be running here?
St. Louis style. I've said that for years. They need to bring St. Louis style back to St. Louis. One thing to point out before we get into the qualifying pairings here, this was the era that Monster Jam had the World Finals flags on the back of each truck. So we see in competition here, Max D, El Toro Loco, Escalade, Gravedigger, Bounty Hunter, Batman, and Suzuki are all sporting these white flags, indicating that they're going to be going to the Monster Jam World Finals number 9 in Las Vegas.
I love the concept with the flags and the qualification, the way they used to do it. I mean, I know that the way they do it now is a little bit more legit in terms of, you know, the points winners get in and for the various tours and so forth. But the way that they identified these trucks, I thought was a great marketing move on their part. This is the way you sell to the crowd. Hey, these guys that are here are the best of the best, and they're all in this top field that's going to Vegas.
Let's see, think about that here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of 10 trucks in this field are going to the World Finals in Las Vegas. So that was a great marketing tool for them. Hey, 7 trucks that are going to go and compete for a world championship, the best of the best, they're here in your town.
For sure. I mean, it's a marquee event on the schedule for this year. We've got the best of the best. And, you know, people like to complain now and say, there ain't enough independents at these Monster Jam shows. We've got 2 out of 10 trucks that are independents here. Things are not like they used to be. Things are a lot better now for the independent guys than they were during this period. And that's what a lot of people forget. You know, we do have great trucks here, but it is unfortunate we don't have as much representation from some of the independent guys.
Our first pairing in qualifying here is Escalade and Maximum Destruction. And like you were talking earlier, this looks like it's going to be a Max D style track here. And that's exactly what it is for Tom Mintz. Mintz goes out and cuts a 20.31. That is an incredibly long lap time around this place. But for Tom Mintz, that is incredibly fast. And that's a time that's going to stick around for quite some time throughout this whole racing bracket. As far as fastest time goes. Escalade clocks in at a 24.11. There's some suspension issues on there in that Escalade truck. I could see it from the stands just watching them pull out to the line, Matt. When you look at these 2 trucks, Max D is a truck that was obviously, it's based after Taurus, the old school Taurus machine from Jackie Willman. This is still a Willman style chassis underneath Mintz at this time. They are having some fuel pump issues. They've been chasing quite a bit this season. However, here in St. Louis at this point in time, this truck is running flawlessly at this point. Escalade, though, sitting way up high in the air. George talks a little bit later about trying to soften the front shocks a little bit to try to get the truck to land a little bit better. But this truck is just, it's sitting so high, it's not going to work out well for him in racing. There's a lot of really hard bounces on the nose for the Escalade truck.
I love how before the race, George is saying, oh, any monkey can get in and drive the truck on a straight line track. You know, this is the kind of setup that I like because it shows who the real drivers are. And then he goes out and just falls on his face.
I came from a racing background of different sorts also, and so I like the speed. I always joke around and say they can stick any monkey in a truck and have them jump on the gas, and if it's straight line racing, you know, they can win. Anyone can win. But these big turning courses, it's driver course. It gives you a chance to, if you don't cut a good light, to make up and outdrive the other driver. So I'm stoked. And you know, if I go out there and lose first round, I'm going to feel like an idiot because I'm just saying it's the driver's course, so I'm going to look like I'm not much of a driver. But I'm feeling confident. You know, we won, like I said, in Anaheim racing last weekend or 2 weekends ago. So I'm feeling like I'm on my game for racing, and I'm ready to go.
Yeah, that was not a quote that aged well for George as far as I was concerned, because if you go back and you watch some Penda-style racing, it is everything those drivers can do to keep those trucks straight. These trucks would be the same thing if you were giving them that kind of track and open rain to run on. It would not be a cakewalk for George, I would guarantee you. He couldn't keep this truck from bouncing so bad between each jump. You put him out there on a straight line Penda course, this truck's slap wheeling in no man's land. It's not going to perform very well, and it did not perform very well right here in qualifying, at least. We go on El Toro Loco and Bounty Hunter right here. This, to me, and I don't know if it is for you, Matt, but to me, this is peak Jimmy Creighton.
All the horsepower's up, and we've got the cut. What are those, Firestones on? On the
very
Bounty
aggressive
Hunter.
Firestone cut.
They got a nice cut. The truck is just crisp. It's looking good. I'm not sure about peak Bounty Hunter, only because, I mean, that new truck done run racing championship, but we may be in peak Bounty Hunter right now and we don't even know it. But he was definitely, you know, rising to the top every single year, and one of the top guys in the industry as a whole, because as he's just, you know, being a superstar on Monster Jam and has a freestyle championship, he was one of the top guys on the MOD tour the previous year in 2007. So, I mean, Creighton's getting out there, and this is the really couple years where he's making his name on a national level and really elevating himself from, you know, kind of upper mid-card guy that's competitive to a headliner at a lot of independent shows, the top guy, and then, you know, always threatening to win every single week at these Monster Jam events against the best in the country.
Exactly. I agree with you 100% right there. As far as Jimmy Creighton goes in St. Louis, though, we'll go back and we'll talk a little bit about Tom Meents real fast. 2004, Meents doubles down. 2005, Meents doubles down. 2006, he won freestyle. 2007 is a double down. 2006, Meents wins freestyle. Who wins racing? Jimmy Creighton and Bounty Hunter gets the racing win at that particular show. Tom had won 7 out of 8 competitions, and the only blemish on his St. Louis record the last 4 years is a blue truck from Tocanoxie, Kansas, and that's Jimmy Creighton. In the other lane, we've got Lupe Sosa, and a guy he doesn't ever really get talked about as one of the major true veterans of the sport here. Lupe started driving a truck called Warrior in the early 90s, and there's a couple of TV appearances you can catch him on at the Astrodome, I believe. Matt, you might know a little bit more about that to me. I just remember seeing this truck every now and then on some old Monster Truck Challenge shows that you would see, and it was a sluggish truck for Lupe, and that's about all I remember of it.
Well, I mean, Lupe goes back even further than that. He's been in this since the mid 80s, and one of those guys that was from Texas and would come to the Astrodome. And if I'm not mistaken, I haven't watched the show in a while, and they didn't show all the runs, but I think he was even at that first Astrodome show for TNT where they had 16 trucks in the racing bracket, and Bigfoot Shuttle was there, race and made it to the finals. I think he was at that show with the original Warrior truck. And
He very well could have been. Like I said, I don't know.
He's one of them OG Texas guys with Scott Stevens and Pablo and all them guys. They were all in it way back then.
Yeah, I'm regressed. I don't know all that much about Lupe other than his time in Monster Jam is when I really got to know him. And because I know Lupe so well as far as Monster Jam goes, is because he was such a well-spoken individual. When he talked to the camera, he looked like he was speaking directly to you. His eyes were right into the lens. I noticed that in his interview before his qualifying pass right here. Lupe it's almost like he's speaking directly to you. And one thing to point out too, in this interview, what's he wearing? An Advanced Auto Parts hat. He's showing sponsors loyalty right here. And I believe a little bit later on, he's going to go and do some things with Advanced Auto Parts.
We've always tried to step up our racing program, and racing's fun, racing's cool, and the fans love the racing. And that's my next place to make a mark, in Monster Jam is the racing.
Oh, for sure. And Lupe is a true professional, and he had kind of gotten a little bit of a bad reputation in terms of being a freestyle only guy. He goes out and he's doing these crazy one-off moves in freestyle after somewhat subpar runs prior to that. He'd kind of putt around and then have some big explosive moment and then take a freestyle win a lot of cases in these stadiums. And we see in the talking head here before the qualifying run, Lupe says they're really trying to step up their racing program with the new El Toro Loco scheme this year for 2008. They've got the darker red. I think the truck looks fantastic, and this is when they kind of started separating the different schemes for El Toro, so you knew who was in which truck. It wasn't just, the same identity at every show, which I thought was cool, getting to change it up a little bit. And I think maybe some of that racing focus started from the fact that they started developing this relationship with Advanced Auto Parts that would, again, grow into the next opportunity they had with the grinder truck, which was a very racing-oriented operation at the request of the sponsor.
Yep, you're 100% right there. Jimmy Creighton says in his little pre-qualifying interview here, he says, when I can open my engine, that's the best scenario you could possibly get, and he's not proving anybody wrong right there.
It's perfect for Bounty Hunter. We've done well here. We've won this last time we were here. And when I can open up my engines, that's the best scenario I could possibly get. And it's tacky, which we'll be getting lots of bite, and it'll be fast. There's a lot of great trucks here, and you can't wait to get out there.
Ken Stout in a few years is going to start claiming that he had false numbers as far as the horsepower department for Jimmy Creighton. Right here, though, a little bit of a slow time, but I feel Jimmy's just feeling out the track. 22:41 for Bounty Hunter, a 23:50 for El Toro Loco. Both of those guys are going to shave off some time a little bit later on in this bracket. Next pairing out was Scarlet Bandit and Batman. Dawn Creighton, Jimmy's wife right here. The old joke is that they used to race between each other to see who would do the dishes as far as the Creightons would go. And unfortunately for Dawn, she was on the losing end quite a bit.
Yeah, we get the talking head here with Dawn, and I like that they talk to all the drivers here before the show in order to get some footage that they could run before some of these races. And Dawn's excited. She's got a new set of tires on their truck that they're trying out. She's hoping that they don't rock up as much in the corners. We see the new Sudden Impact Racing tires with the low tread on them here in St. Louis on the Scarlet Bandit. And remember, these tires had just come out. It was like, what, the first season for them that people were able to buy them. So she even has these tires before Feld kind of switched over all their company trucks to have the Sudden Impact tires for a couple years. And Dawn's excited about them, hoping that they will elevate her racing program as well.
Actually, I got new tires put on 2 or 3 weeks ago, and in the corners now I stay low instead of picking up on one end. So I really like them. The other ones had knife edges, so I'd always be worried about, I think I rolled over several times in turning courses, and I pretty much stay planted and just slide right around. So I'm excited to do another one. I've only had one turning course since I had gotten them, so it'll be nice to try it again. Yeah, this was a tire that was the talk of the industry for quite some time in the era that it ran. They were sometimes known as China tires. They were Sudden Impact Racing tires. Obviously, you could order them through Sudden Impact Racing's website if you really wanted to. There was also one set of blue Sudden Impact tires, blue rubber Sudden Impact tires that ran for quite a number of years, whether it was on Sudden Impact or Straight Jacket. Those tires seemed to stick around for a long time before they were finally just to the point where they were unusable anymore. These tires worked really good, surprisingly, on this floor right here. And this was one of those events. It was a big Monster Jam show. She was the only person out there running these tires. She previously talks about her previous set of tires as having knife edges and it would cause her to roll over. These tires, I don't know. I mean, there's no edges on the edge as far as the knife edges go, but they had plenty of edge in the tread themselves to really push you straight around this track. And I think it really helped her.
They do. You know, they're one of the advantages was it was a much lighter tire, which is one of the advantages of the BKTs they run now. These things are not easy to manhandle around when you're putting them on and off the truck. I mean, a couple 100 pounds difference makes a huge difference when they're out on the road and working solo. And you're always trying to look to save any weight you can. And when it comes with, you know, equal or even better performance, it's a win-win.
One of the more popular guys in the sport, somebody that honestly, if you needed the shirt off your back, you can ask John Seesock for it. Always a good guy to me whenever I met him. I got to tell you, though, driving Sudden Impact, eventually having to sell that truck. Now he's arguably in the best ride of his career in the DC Comics Batman machine.
Kind of career validation for him. He goes out, he gets the world championships, and man, there's a lot of guys out there, especially if you listen to Scott Douglas's podcast, where they'd say, hey, you know, when nobody would answer my calls when I was trying to get in the industry, John Seesock was there to answer questions or give me financial advice on how I should book the truck. A lot of other guys would look at somebody new coming in as competition that they didn't want to help out, and John seemed to help everybody in that aspect. So, you know, won the Sportsman of the Year award. I forget how many years with Monster Jam. There's not a lot bad that I can say about John Seesock. The interactions I've had with him personally have always been positive, and you know, he even ran the special events races at the end of Feld's booking other their trucks out for other promoters. John went out and ran a couple seasons, or at least one, on the Jamborees with some of the trucks. So I mean,
yeah, he went out. He had his Batman truck, and I believe it was they split drivers with the Monster Mutt truck. One time I got to saw him. It was George Bellhand behind the wheel of the Monster Mutt with John obviously behind the wheel of Batman. But that was a whole interesting situation. People had written special events, begged special events, would go to shows, talk to officials, begging to have John Seesock come back. And lo and behold, I believe he got to, and somebody can correct me on the year. I want to say it was 2009, but I could be 100% wrong. My years run together with me every now and then, and this is one of them. But I remember talking to John in Springfield, Illinois, when he was at that show, and he was very overwhelmed by that. He couldn't believe that some people that were fans of another promotion were begging to have him come back.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing when people want you to work for them.
Exactly.
It shows you're doing something right.
Exactly. And the qualifying passes right here, though, the first thing that I noticed, they're focused in on Batman. But, man, you can hear Don Creighton's truck in the other lane. That Creighton horsepower is something else. That truck sounded so crisp every time you heard it on TV, as far as Don goes.
Truck brilliantly prepared by Cody Saucier and the team, and you can see the power. He just lifts the front end off the ground.
Well, her truck sounded a little different than Jimmy's because I think she was running more of a turned up header setup, and Jimmy had a little bit more of a collector header
Mm-hmm.
arrangement on his truck here, but still making big horsepower. And Dawn, she'd reach up and bite you every now and then. She won a couple years in Phoenix there in the stadium. One of the true, unsung people that really, I don't think, got enough credit for how much she did in the industry.
Yeah, and she still does quite a bit within the industry as well. I mean, she's got to put up with Jimmy Creighton. Sorry, Jimmy. Had to throw that out there. Times here, though, Batman 21:04 to Scarlet Bandit's 21:56. Dawn is, you could almost make a comparison of Dawn's driving style to Scott Hartsock's to an extent. She knew exactly how hard to push that truck, and when she needed to push it hard, she could, and we'd find out exactly how hard she could push it at World Finals 9 when she has that incredible rollover. You can check that episode out I did with Phil Vichcananza, and I know I probably butchered his name again. Sorry, Phil. But you can check that episode out in our archives. Our next race, though, our next pairing here is Gravedigger and Blue Thunder. Tony Farrell, a guy I mentioned earlier, got to start driving the Blue Ribbon Bandit truck, would later go on to drive Wild Thing. And again, I have to say it, who wouldn't want to drive around a giant skull? Tony Farrell did that with the Wild Thing machine. It never quite got any more recognition after Tony got out of the sport for a little bit. There were a few guys that ended up driving the Wild Thing truck, but nobody got it to the popularity that Tony got it to. Tony is now in the number one driver role as far as the Bigfoot of Feld, the Blue Thunder machine right here. And I got to tell you, Tony is doing an excellent job with this truck.
Tony always represented the built Ford tough brand well, and a great guy. It's a shame that we don't have him with us anymore. He was trying to do the right thing and ended up the victim of a horrific accident, which is unfortunate. But Tony's putting the hammer down here in the built Ford Tough Blue Thunder, and that is the full name of the truck at this point. They always made sure to include that built Ford Tough part of the title, and we get halfway through this qualifying pass, and he's right on pace with Gravedigger number 20.
Yeah, that he is. Dennis is going to end up with the better time, and I will say this. Digger 20 looks amazing. That's all I'm going to say about that truck. It just looks so good at this show. What else could be said about Dennis Anderson, though? Last week we covered pretty much an improbable win with Digger 14. He's wild and crazy at the Metrodome in 2003, and you can tell right here that driving style has not changed. Dennis goes a 21:06, just barely behind Batman, and Blue Thunder with a 21:59. Two great passes right here, and I got to tell you that these two trucks are going to be ones to watch in this bracket. We scroll to the last qualifying pass, though, Matt, here, and this one's kind of interesting. We've got Monster Mutt Dalmatian, a fresh, young Candace Jolly behind the wheel, and then we have Team Suzuki with Bobby Parr in the other lane, a Pikes Peak record holder.
Yeah, at this point, Candace is still kind of just known as Courtney's sister. She would obviously go on to have a longer career than her older sister Courtney in monster trucks, but at this time she's still pretty new. I think this is her second year in the truck, and
I believe so, yes.
And she's getting better every run, and she ends up being one of the seasoned veterans and one of the top female drivers in the brand after many years. So she's excited with her improvements so far this year, now that she has more seat time, she says. And Bobby's excited that he's got an all-new truck for this season, and he can push it a little harder because the shock angles and everything are a little bit different. So we've got a lot of excitement here between these two qualifying participants.
Yeah, you certainly do. One thing to say about Candace, too, she's drag raced. She's raced swamp buggies a time or two. Her passion is barrel racing with horses. It's a different kind of horsepower for you. She'll go, and you see videos every now and then on her social media, her just taking a horse and wheeling it around like it's absolutely nothing. Woman's not afraid of anything. And she even says here in her interview beforehand, hey, I've rolled the truck over a couple more times, so now I'm not afraid of that anymore either.
Well, I've got a lot of seat time behind my belt now. So a lot more freestyles, a lot more racing. So I've been doing really good this year. We've made it to the finals several different times in several different venues, and got a few more flips under my belt, so that's not even scary anymore.
Yeah, well, the Jolly family has no fear. If you're a fan of monster trucks, you're probably a fan of other forms of weird motorsport. And if you remember watching the Swamp Buggies on TNN back in the day, Don Jolly in the Unlimited class, and then his wife Bonnie, she ran the stock V8 class with the Fatal Attraction. I mean, that's Candace's parents. She grew up around this stuff. And, then when Courtney got into it with the Pastrana 199 truck a few years prior, and then Candace kind of took that family name and took it even further through many more years of Monster Jam. So the whole family a bunch of competitive motorsports participants, and none of them have any fear.
Exactly, and she has to have no fear to be married to Neil Elliott. But anyway, we scroll on here. Suzuki with a 2150, Monster Mutt Dalmatian a 2260. Not a bad pass for Courtney or Candace right there. Sorry. As we move into how our qualifying pairs ended up, interesting to note, the first pairing that we had produced both the first and last place qualifiers, Max D and Escalade. Max D, your number 1 qualifier, Escalade number 10. Then we follow Max D with Batman, Gravedigger, Team Suzuki, Blue Thunder, Bounty Hunter, Scarlet Bandit, Dalmatian, and El Toro Loco. And right there at the very end, we've got Escalade. Suspension issues for George are killing him on this track. We will say, though, before we go into the next round, Mintz blows the field away by 0.7 of a second in qualifying. You coined it at the beginning of the show here. It's a Mintz-style track, 0.7 of a second. That's no lie right there, showing you exactly. It's definitely a Mintz-style track. However, they're dropping the Mintz and Escalade race to the bottom of the bracket at the request of Tom Mintz, as we're told on television.
Yeah, they're having some issues with the truck. They need to get it addressed, and we find out, they're having fuel issues still with Maximum Destruction, and no harm, no foul. They're going to, stretch some time and let them drop to the bottom of the bracket. They'll run that race last in order to give them time to get the problems figured out.
Race we're going to start the bracket off with is Blue Thunder and Bounty Hunter. Interesting pair right here. These two actually tied for a freestyle world championship. As I said earlier, the nod went to Bounty Hunter in the tiebreaker that they had. Farrell actually leads the second time by over Creighton right here. Tony keeping it very close to the poles. And then Mark, as this is happening, he says you're shoving almost 4,000 horsepower into the dirt here. Just something to think about between Creighton's truck making maybe a little over 2,100 or so horsepower and the Blue Thunder truck about 1,500, 1,650, somewhere in that range. It's a lot of horsepower getting shoved into this really long track right here, and we're getting to see them really open it up. Creighton's going to end up taking the win here in a photo finish over Blue Thunder, a 20.4 time. He runs pretty close to what Tom ran. These guys are going to get faster throughout this night.
So the first race we're going to look at is a dandy matchup of 2 huge Ford power plants, Bounty Hunter and Blue Thunder. Oh, when these two guys come off the line, the building shakes.
Well, Scott, you're shoving almost 4,000 horsepower into the dirt here. It's going to make some noise.
Tony Farrell's got the edge by a truck length. Jimmy's got to crack the whip. Creighton trying to come from behind. Watch that Ford finish line. Creighton will make up the ground. Jimmy Creighton pulls it out, and he pulled that bad boy out on the back half of the run, really in the final turn, Mark.
Yeah, and Jimmy really sails it off that final jump, and you can see how he angles the last corner where he carries the speed and he kind of arcs out and jumps in the air all the way almost to the concrete. His balance lands on the concrete. That's how far he flew out, an entire, lane and a half out of his lane. So he was carrying a ton of speed out of the last corner, a very tight finish, and Bounty Hunter's moving on to round number 2. And these guys are starting to figure out with these wide sweeping corners that they can, if they get out of that last corner correctly, they can just pretty much send it and deal with the repercussions afterwards because they got so much room to work with here in St. Louis.
Yeah, Blue Thunder in this pass right here, he's hiking the left front up. He's hiking the left rear up just a little bit as well. Suspension's playing a big role into this as well because you got to be able to put all that power into the track, and I think that's what cost Farrell right here in round 1. Wasn't able to keep the power down to keep the lead that he'd built up over Creighton. Creighton takes the win with his horsepower, obviously, is a big factor here on this track. We move on to the next round, though. A little bit of a rematch, or no, excuse me, a little bit of a matchup you kind of wanted to see, maybe. Scarlet Bandit at number 7 taking on number 4, Team Suzuki. It's an interesting pair right here between Bobby Parr and Don Creighton.
We got the pink truck and a yellow truck. Those are 2 clashing colors, I guess. Going to be interesting to see how they work out. Bobby comes off that first jump, and it almost looks like the truck stutters real bad going into that first corner.
Yeah, Scott Douglas says that he had a bad landing, but when you look back at it, he really didn't have all that bad of a landing. It's like the truck cut power for a second, and then it came back, and that's all Don Creighton needed was that bit of a mistake, whether it was a mistake on Bobby's part or it was a mistake on just the truck itself going bad. I don't know exactly what happened right there. It was just awkward for Bobby Parr.
Here's Bobby Parr, as we talked about, not a newcomer to motorsports, but just in his second year racing in Monster Jam. And he's got a tough assignment. He better not take this young lady very softly. Dawn Creighton knows how to race, and she's got that Creighton power in Scarlet Bandit. Round 1 action continues. Boy, was Dawn smooth as silk off the line, and a bad bounce for Bobby. He had to check up. Scarlet Bandit's got a big edge early. Huge lead for Dawn Creighton. She just needs to keep it on all 4 wheels right now, and she'll advance to the second round. Off the final turn to the Ford finish line, the victory to Scarlet Bandit. Kudos, if you will, to Bobby Parr for coming back strong at the end, but not enough to get the win.
Dawn Creighton pulls out quite a good run right here, and I believe her brand new truck. I'm not 100% sure, but I think this was the first year for this Scarlet Bandit chassis. Jimmy would take this on tour as bounty hunter in the summertime and just decimate people in the Monster Truck Challenge circuit. But here, it's Dawn's truck. She's driving it extremely well. She's putting it through its paces. The truck sounds amazing. And in her interview right here, she probably has the quote of the night. As Shara points out, hey, you're going to have Jimmy next round. And she replies, may the best woman win.
Dawn, I got a chance to talk to Jimmy, and he said that both your horsepowers are incredible tonight. It looks like that is working. It is. It's definitely a horsepower track. Getting around those corners, it's a really long track, really wide corner, not a lot of rear steering being used, so it's all in the power. And now you got to go up against Jimmy. I do. May the best woman win.
Mark, am not touching that one.
Yeah, and the guys on the broadcast kind of play with that for the rest of the show. And, you know, what's interesting to note is that, I mean, Dawn, she cut over a half second off her qualifying time. So while still not as fast as, you know, your Mentz or you know, some of the other guys, she's improving every single run. So we got to keep an eye on her on the next round and see if those times continue to improve.
Yeah, Dawn goes a 21.91 right here, so she's breaking past the 22-second barrier. She's going to have to go pretty quick, though, to keep up with her husband, who just ran a 20.4. Next round, though, right here is what Scott Douglas says. Candace has drawn Big Daddy. She's got Gravedigger right here. By the way, have I mentioned how awesome Digger 20 looks right here?
Boy, it looks fast in the racetrack. And Dennis, you know, kudos to Candace. She puts in a pretty good run, but Dennis ends up taking low ET of the day so far, 20.13. I'd call it a picture-perfect run to this point. He's carrying speed through the corners. He's diming, you know, off the corners the way that I would do it if I tried to go, and he cuts in tight, swings out a little bit wide, and then kind of cuts back in for the end of the jump to get lined up. So, I mean, it looks good to me. And like I said, Candace did a good job, put in a half-decent time, but just, you know, you can't beat the low ET of the day so far.
And Candace has drawn the Big Daddy, and he is really looking to make an impression. His first time back on TV in several weeks. Gravedigger in the mud. Well, Candace still cuts a great light, but I think she was a little hot into the turn, way wide, and Dennis opens up the lead. To the final turn. 26 years driving the Gravedigger, and Dennis Anderson looking as strong as ever as he gets a very easy victory over the Monster Mud Dalmatian.
No, you can't beat that. Dennis has probably the run of the night to this point right here. Digger, like I said, looks phenomenal. The truck's jumping and landing flawlessly, though throughout the night it seems like suspension issues are going to jump up and bite just about every truck right here. Batman and El Toro Loco is up next, number 2 and number 9 qualifiers. A wild race between these two, as Mark points out that the track is starting to go away.
Yeah, we see the dirt really moving out in the corners, and as these guys are sliding around, it's kind of like I talked about earlier. The looser this dirt is, the more you can kind of start sliding that tail around. And the guys that are in the company trucks, the Patrick chassis, they can't do it as much because most of those trucks have pretty aggressive cut Goodyears on them. And as we see going into these corners, even though the track's getting looser and dried out, the inside tires of Batman are still rocking up in these corners. John carries the left front tire the whole way through this last corner.
Yeah, John carries the left front tire through all the way through there. Sosa's kind of doing a little bit of the same over there. I mean, Seasock is briefly on 2 wheels in the corner for a moment there. He ends up running a 20.50 though, so he's shaved off a bunch of time from qualifying as well, our number 2 qualifier. I got to tell you though, he's still not on that Gravedigger pace. Dennis is looking really good. We'll put it that way.
Now, Lupe Sosa will bring the newly designed El Toro Loco to the line. Love the new paint job on that machine from the driver out of the Corpus Christi area. Tough assignment, though, for Lupe. He goes up against the reigning Monster Jam World Racing Champion, John Seasock, and Batman was the second fastest qualifier.
Right there from the start, I noticed, Scott, the track is starting to go away. It's drying up. You saw how hard he hooked up in qualifying. He's lifting the tires. Not so much this time.
Lupe is solid there, even first time by. Keep your eyes on that Ford finish line. This one's going right down to the end. John, both trucks actually lift up that left front wheel, and Seasock gets a little better bite off the turn and gets the victory. Batman advancing to round 2, but again, because of a 10-truck bracket, I think Sosa may be coming back. That was a fast run.
Yeah, it really was a fast run. You saw the front end lift up really high on Batman right here. Look at the dirt coming off that back tire. He's actually got the left rear tire also. He's staying in the throttle very, very hard.
Strong run for John Seasock. He's your winner. Now he's with Shara.
John, you went up against El Toro and you took him out. Tell us about it.
Yeah, this track is awesome. It's fun. It's fast. It's real wide open. Having a blast out there. I think I made a bad call on my tire pressure though. I have it lower down so I get better traction, but I'm having a hard time in the corners hiking up on 2 wheels. You know, we made it past that last one. I'm not sure we have next round, but we're going to try to beat him, take him out too.
Scott thinks Sosa's probably going to come back as fast loser, and then Shara goes and interviews John. He thinks he made a bad call on tire pressure. He's hiking up in the corners. We'll find out later. Tire pressure is probably what's causing an issue for his suspension as well later on in the bracket. We finally get to our number 1 and number 10 matchup right here with Max D and Escalade. And I can tell you, this race, it should have started off the bracket. Whatever issue with Max D seems to be fixed right here. But the story of this race is Escalade's second jump. As he comes around that corner, he jumps over the cars. It's at an awkward angle. I don't even really know how to describe it other than the fact that when he's going over the cars, Matt, his front tires are turned to the left, but the rear is kicking to the left. And when that happens, it's just a bad recipe as far as landing goes for the Escalade truck. He ends up popping it up onto the right side tires, sidewalls the truck, kind of brings it up onto the right front tire, brings it down in an incredible save. I mean, it's hard to describe. I did my best to describe it, but man, that is just an incredible save from the Escalade truck right here. The issue that we have though is at this point, he's kind of cut into Tom's run. So Tom's run is not as fast as it could have been. It's 21:15 for Max D.
Let's watch Mitch. We understand they've been trying to work on those fuel issues. Wow. George is all over the place. Escalade with a problem. Bad bounce. But he's hanging in there. Oh no, he's not hanging in there now. What a save. He won't win, but he has turned these fans on with an incredible save. But that did not look like a great run from Max D at all. It was, a matter of fact, slow.
Well, you know, Scott, he had to slow down rather than the officials shutting him off and really kind of screwing up his time to eliminate his lane choice. They let him make the run, so he had to slow down. So he gets the win. He'll get the lane choice. The time's going to hurt him. You know, George, this isn't freestyle. This is racing here, buddy. I mean, what a save.
Yeah, I mean, Tom has to get out of it a little bit to keep from hitting him as George is kind of sitting there right after the finish line that Tom's heading for. And we talk about the save here from George. The what happens is he's sliding coming out of the corner into that jump. And when the truck's in a slide like that and it hits the base of that ramp, it basically hooks. And then the rear end goes the other way and it throws the truck into a kind of a tailfish slap, if you will. And then it continues to make itself worse when it lands. Now you're bouncing between the sidewalls and the left and right tires. And George does a great job. I don't know how he didn't kill a 4-link bar riding up on the angle that he did, because the tire looks like it's oh so close to wiping out that 4-link bar. But either way, the spinners are spinning, but Tom comes through for the win.
Yeah, Mins comes through for the win right here, and this was the first of many wow factors on this night right here. They describe Max D's run as not fast at all. Well, it's hard to have a fast run when there's a truck in your way. So his time gets hurt right here, and it hurts Tom to the point that he might not have lane choice. However, we go into round number 2, and we find out that he's got Candace Jolly right here, the first fast loser. It's not going to hurt Tom's lane choice, but it is something to point out as far as, hey, Tom had to slow down a little bit. They could have said that versus saying, oh, it just wasn't fast. The 21:15 on this track is still pretty quick.
It's still pretty quick for sure. And I don't know. I don't think we got the time for Candace in the prior race, but I would imagine that Tom, was pretty close to it, if not a little bit faster. But we get a little interview here with George after.
Hang on. After this though, we talked to George.
Yeah.
But I have to point this out. There's an Advanced Auto Parts Inside Look segment. And if you look at the beginning of this segment off to the really far right, there is a guy standing there. He's wearing an Arrive, Raise Hell, Leave, Stone Cold Steve Austin shirt. That is me, ladies and gentlemen, making my television debut.
Oh, I see you there at the edge of the frame there, my friend.
That was before the beard, too. It's almost embarrassing to look back nowadays. But I had to tell you, that was cool. I had hoped, because when they came over for that segment, I'm standing in line for Dennis Anderson, obviously, trying to get, I had a 25th anniversary silver flag that was flown on one of the back of Adam's trucks at one point for the 25th anniversary, and I had him sign it there. And that's initially where I asked him to do an interview with me for All Monster. Ended up being almost a year later that we finally got to do it. It's in our archives, by the way, if you want to listen to the audio from that, my interview with Dennis. But as they're setting up for that, I'm thinking, oh, cool, I might be on TV. So when this episode came out, I'm like a hawk watching this episode, waiting for this segment, hoping they're going to air this segment. The other thing to point out, too, here, Matt, at this segment that you see me off into the far corner, a little bit later on, we see Tom Mintz signing autographs. Directly behind him, that is my father that walks past. So we both made our television debut on the same night.
Man, you guys were just hounding around the cameras the whole day there, trying to get some.
Oh, yeah. It's a funny story, because I remember when it happened, I had the DVR at this point. We're not that far removed from getting DVRs, just so y'all know. This is still a retro Monster Truck review, but we had DVRs in 08. I rewound back and I saw myself on TV a couple times. I was like, oh, that's cool. That's great. And then I saw my dad walk past and I'm like, well, hell, he was on TV longer than me.
Oh, yeah, hey, you gotta grease the production guys if you want to get all the camera time, right?
Oh, that's what he was doing over there. I'm gonna have to phone call with him later. I'm kidding. I love you, Dad. We move on though. Round number 2, Max D, the fast loser Monster Mutt Dalmatian. What's Candace's reward? She gets Tom Mintz. Not a reward that you really want. Hey, you get to come back. Oh, by the way, you're taking on Tom Mintz.
Yeah, Candace has a tall order to fill here, and we come through this first corner, and hey, surprise, Candace has got the lead at half track.
Yeah, and that was something that you're watching live, you're like, holy, where did she come from? And then as soon as you hear it on TV about Scott Douglas saying, hey, Tim Mullet Macenis over there, he seems to have fixed the truck. As soon as he lands and you see Candace is ahead, he stops immediately what he's saying. He goes, well, maybe not. Maybe they didn't fix it this first time by. But across the finish line, though, it's all Max D by about a truck and a half. I don't know what happened to Candace in the corner, but I will point this out. There is so many times watching Monster Jam over the years on a Chicago-style track where you would see Tom Mintz not be in the lead the first time by, but the second time by, he's winning by a truck and a half, 2 trucks. Tom would save everything for that final corner because he knew that's where you needed to push. And that truck just worked so well in those situations for him. He would bonsai that last hit, but that first quarter of the track, he would be so controlled.
Free for Candace Jolly. Again, she was knocked out in the first round by Gravedigger. She gets to come back as a fast loser, and look at her reward. Tom Mintz and Maximum Destruction. Hey, Candace, welcome to Monster Jam. No, she's been around for a while. She wants to get one of these big boys knocked off. Let's see if she can get Mintz. Well, whatever problems that Tim Macenis and the team for Maximum Destruction were working on, I think they've got them fixed. Well, maybe not. Monster Mutt Dalmatian's got the lead.
Boy, Candace looked really smooth in that turn, Scott. She did an awesome job there. Not in and out of the throttle. Her setup was good.
All she did was wake him up at the halfway point because Tom went to the hammer. He cracked the whip, and Max D came back. She had the lead at the halfway point, and Tom finished her off big time.
Yeah, I mean, they show Candace's final corner, and it looks pretty clean to me. It's just Tom carried so much more speed, as you said, through that final corner. That's the difference.
Yeah, and Tom's going to lose a little bit of time, actually, right here with a 20.85. Faster than round 1, but well slower than his qualifying pass. Seems like Tom started to square the corner up in this pass right here. He would turn in, drive straight, and then make an exit corner as well, kind of like what we saw last week with Mark Johnson, except Tom Mintz is doing it with speed right here, and he does it very well. Ironically, though, the reason that we saw so many Chicago-style tracks, I'll just go ahead and bring it up. What channel are we on, Matt?
We're on Speed Channel.
There you go. That's exactly why you saw so many of these really fast racetracks. Speed Channel demanded Monster Jam do this, just so everybody knows.
Really?
Yes, that was something that I was told many years ago. Speed Channel demanded, not necessarily demanded, but they requested high-speed racetracks for the Speed Channel, and that's what they got. That's why we saw so many Chicago styles for over the years that were built around everything.
Well, thanks, Speed Channel.
Yeah, your inside baseball quote for the day right there. Scarlet Bandit up next against Bounty Hunter. Who's going to do the dishes, Matt?
Well, looks like it's going to be Jimmy by the time this is all said and done. Punches in a 20.13 second run right up there with the top guys. That's, on par with the fast time of the night. Ties it. He takes about a 3-truck length lead over his better half.
Yep, he's picked up a lot since qualifying, we'll put it that way. And as we show in the slow motion replay right here, you can see that there is a definite groove developing directly around these turn poles right here. An interview, instead of getting an interview with Jimmy Creighton, though, who do we get an interview with? Guy Wood is crewing for Jimmy Creighton right here. Always good to see the formal Tropical Thunder, Bob and Tom, and of course, Bulldozer driver right here. He talks about how Jimmy seems to have some starting issues, and the issue and how he's going to solve this issue, Matt, is the way that most men want to solve every issue. How do? They get a hammer.
Jimmy Creighton has actually got an old Monster Jam driver. Guy Wood is his crew chief. Shar is going to catch up with Guy.
Guy, you're crewing for the Bounty Hunter. What's going on with the starter problems? Can you tell us?
Yeah, the starter has bushings in it, and what happens, they get out of place. So we take a hammer and we hit the back of the starter, it actually engages it. So we got to keep watching when Jimmy's out there. So far, we've been fortunate when he's been out on the track, he's been able to start. So we're hoping it keeps doing that. Otherwise, you'll see me run out there with a hammer to hit it.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you fix a starter that won't work, and you don't have time to change it, right? You got to smack it with a hammer.
Yeah.
And hopefully the brushes see it enough that the solenoid will fire and it'll make the truck start. And I can say that's pretty much the standard, operating procedure for everybody in monster truck racing.
My question is as they're hitting that solenoid, are they humming happy, happy, joy, joy in their head?
Happy, happy, joy, joy, happy, happy, joy, joy, happy, happy, joy, joy, happy, happy, joy.
I don't know about that, but I mean, even at the Dennis Anderson ride truck, I saw them smacking it with a wrench, trying to get the truck to fire up and go. And unfortunately for them, they ended up having to change the starter out because it was all full of mud. So it's a common problem on these trucks. They're exposed to the elements, and if they had a weekend, the week prior where they had some rain, boy, that could cause havoc for the following weeks to come.
It certainly could. That's something that gets changed out a lot on any high horsepower vehicle is the starter. We move on to the next round, though, and here we have the second wow moment of the night. Gravedigger, number 3 qualifier, taking on fast loser Blue Thunder. Anderson leads the first time by, but not by much. Farrell is pushing it through these corners. He's hiking those tires up around the corner, while as Anderson has that wider stance on Digger 20. He doesn't have that issue that Blue Thunder is having unless he's landing the truck, whereas Blue Thunder is having it speeding through these corners. Farrell is wide on the final corner exit. He hits the final jump right side heavy. Suspension unloads awkwardly. The truck swings in the air, and he lands very hard on that left front tire. Digs into the ground, completely wads a 4-link bar, and just destroys the drivetrain in this truck.
So Tony Farrell brings the built Ford Tough Blue Thunder to the line to take on Dennis Anderson and the Gravedigger. Here's a pair of guys that have battled many, many times over the years, and Tony always ratchets it up when he gets a shot at Dennis. Let's see what they do here. What does Dennis look great coming off the line?
Really smooth and in the groove. I realize it's straight line, but he just looks smooth as can be coming on this big track again.
Even to the final turn, Dennis Anderson and Gravedigger, Tony Farrell and Blue Thunder give the win to the Digger. And Tony's in trouble. Oh my!
Tony is in big trouble.
That's the second truck we've seen land off that set of cars. Weird.
When we see this replay, Scott, I'm going to show you and explain to you exactly what happened. The way Tony came out of the turn, the inside tires were lifting up on it, and he absolutely, it was either lift it or give it and take that chance and hoping that he could cross the finish line first. He wasn't able to cross the finish line first, and he went for one wild ride.
Tony's okay. He's out of the truck, giving a wave to the fans. Well, there's no real option there for what you just said, because we both know Tony Farrell, he's not lifting.
No, he's not going to lift, and to try and gather it up at that very last second. Right here, the inside tire's pulling. The back end is washed out. He had to hit that ramp a little bit crooked, and when you do that and your front tires are turned and your back tires are a little bit off, you land like that, you got yourself a heap of problems. And right here, you can see what happened. Now he's got the issue of whether he can get this thing back together for freestyle even yet tonight, because he's got 4-link bars that are torn out. He's got the transfer case, the drive line. He's got a ton of stuff that he's got junked up on that truck right now.
I mean, he completely yard sales the thing. Again, we're hitting the ramp kind of on the slide, and similar to what happened with an Escalade, in this case, Tony, I'm not sure. It looks like he doesn't have the throttle wigged out when he lands. I don't know if he got off of it a little bit to let himself try to correct, but that was not the thing you want to do. You want to hit that ground full throttle, basically. That's the only way you're going to pull out of that. And the tire just tucks under and gets into the 4-link bar, and from there, it's just all downhill.
Yeah, and you were correct when you said yard sale. There are parts, pieces, and just general metal shavings all over the racetrack at this point. You can see the drive shaft yoke is broken in half, laying on the ground out there. You can see the 4-link bar literally snapped in half. Normally on a hit like that, you would expect it to snap in half, but that was a violent snap for that truck right there. It's fiberglass destroyed. Everything is broken underneath this truck. And we'll see a little bit later on right here that they have this truck on jack stands in the back. You'll see different crew members going underneath of it. You'll see Tony Farrell himself, Cody Saucier. They even have the fleet driver underneath this truck trying to get it fixed for freestyle. And man, it's like building an entire monster truck in less than an hour.
Tony had a wild ride out there, as you can see. It's hard to believe that this truck may come back from freestyle. We'll see if they can put it back together.
Well, all the King's horses and all the King's Mega get her done. They've got a bunch of help. Now, there's his crew chief, Bill Easterly Jr., but Mark, that's one of the cool things about Monster Jam. There are several crews helping him out here.
Well, they've got several crew members, but I'm taking a look at this. You got Big Rob Cartwright here. He's actually the fleet driver for these guys. You know, he just hauls the rig down. He's got his hands in there. Tony Farrell's in there. He figured he wrecked it. He better help fix it, you know?
You saw Batman's crew chief, Cody Saucier, in the middle of it, so they're going to continue to work on it. Hope to join us again next time out on Monster Jam at Freestyle.
Oh, it's crazy. And before we get into the repair effort, let's not sell short the job Dennis does coming across the line. He's all kinds of out of shape too. And he comes into this final corner, or out of the final corner, I should say. He's kind of sliding a little bit. The truck does a little bit of a similar thing, not as bad. He ends up landing on the left rear tire, and then the chassis unloads. And boy, Dennis stands in the throttle and pulls out of it. You know,
he
again,
drives it all the way to the dumpsters again to try to keep the trucks, to stop the truck.
He really does. He slides into what looks like a lot of sand down at the end of the track, right in front of the wall protection. So Dennis able to save the truck. Tony was too far over to the side. He couldn't pull it out on that one. And, you know, we'll catch up on the repair effort as the show goes through. And as we get into some of the freestyle action, we'll check in with them again. So there's a lot of work to do if they want to have this thing ready by the end of the night.
Anderson clocks in at a 20.24, and I'm pretty sure Blue Thunder was right behind him. Had to be in the 20.4 range for Tony Farrell right there. A big shame as far as that accident goes. Tony's all right, of course. He's back there working on the truck. They're trying to get it fixed to come out for freestyle. Moving on, though, we've got Batman and El Toro Loco right here. El Toro Loco, surprisingly, has a truck length lead on Seasock going into the last corner, and that's a big surprise as far as the guy he's racing against is your defending world champion right here. I don't know what's going on with Seasock. He has a really bad bounce setting up the final turn, and that's kind of the nail in the coffin right there. And El Toro Loco is going to down the Batman. He's going to cut the signal off right in the middle of Gotham's need.
El Toro Loco is the hero Gotham deserves.
Yeah, Lupe's looking good, and he ends up punching in a 21 flat, so he's starting to approach that upper echelon in terms of ETs. I don't think John had that bad of a run. Like I said, he gets a little bit of a bounce going into the corner, but it doesn't, I don't think, slow him up that bad. Lupe just, I mean, he got it.
I don't know, when you watch that back and you see John land off that second jump, he's bouncing pretty hard. And by that point, there are a lot of people that are already starting to turn into that corner. John's still bouncing. So I think that cuts off at least 3 or 4 tenths of a second for him just on corner entry.
Lupe Sosa snorting at the start line, and El Toro Loco, he will take on Monster Jam's reigning world racing champion, John Seasock and Batman. They're looking for green. El Toro's hanging in there with the world champ. Let's watch him the first time by. And El Toro's got a lead, but we've seen guys making up ground. This turn is a little better at this end. Can Seasock pull it out? Here they come to the Ford finish. Lupe Sosa crosses in front of the world champion. What a huge win for Lupe and El Toro Loco, who told us earlier, yeah, he's won a World Freestyle Championship. He's really trying to step up that racing game. And, of course, racing is so important to his crew chief, RL Race, and that truck obviously was set up brilliantly.
Yeah, I mean, it does probably affect the entry a little bit. He pushes hard, and, you know, coming through the finish, it looks like they about maintain the interval that was there the previous time across the line. So John made some up on the back half of the corner. Just wasn't enough to get back past Lupe. He had a strong, solid run. It was a fast time, 21 flat.
Yeah, he takes advantage of the fast loser, comes back and puts himself in the semifinals. Inside Monster Jam is going to bring us back and show us the carnage that was the Blue Thunder crash. And all I have to say is, wow, looking at that truck on jack stands. There are no front knuckles on this truck. They have, I believe the differential is pulled out of this thing as well in the front. They have basically shocks holding it up on the corners. It's sitting on jack stands. It's a mangled mess that they have to put back together right here.
Oh, yeah, we've got broken axle shafts. We've got planetaries that they're ripping apart. They end up having to put a pair of shocks on the back of the truck because they were bent. Ring and pinion tore up. We see everybody pitching in, helping work on the truck. Tony's hammering away at it. We've got the crew guys from multiple teams. It's an all-hands-on-deck effort to try to get this thing back ready for freestyle because it's one of the top names. People want to see it perform.
Yeah, it's one of the big three in Monster Jam. Digger, Max D, Blue Thunder. At this point, that is your top three trucks in Monster Jam. You've got guys, Cody from Batman, Cody Saucier, RL Race, the fleet driver, Tony himself. Everybody that's within eye shot and can run a wrench is working on this truck to try to get it back for freestyle at this point. And they have a lot to do. We go into the semifinals, though, and this was a race that I think everybody had circled that they wanted to see coming in to this St. Louis show, and that's Max D and Bounty Hunter. Unfortunately, though, we don't really get to see it. They both come hard off the line, and they have a close-up here on Max D, Matt. And as Tom goes over the cars, you could just hear the truck dying. It comes to a slow stop. They cut to a quick shot of Bounty Hunter, and when they come back, Mintz is just crawling.
Jimmy Creighton, one of the few drivers in this industry who has had some success against Tom Mintz. Let's see if Bounty Hunter's got another surprise for Max D, or will the 7-time world champ get him again? Here we go. Tom knew he had to cut a great light because he knows Jimmy's coming in.
Tom's got problems, Scott.
Big problem. Max D is shut down. He has pulled it out of the way. Just enough room for the Bounty Hunter to get through because Jimmy's still battling for lane choice in the championship race. He is definitely going there. Gremlins bite maximum destruction, and Jimmy Creighton and Bounty Hunter are headed into tonight's finale, a championship race berth for the Bounty Hunter.
Yeah, you can tell as Tom goes over this first set of cars that something's not right. The truck loses power either right before or in the air because he kind of just lands, dead fish style. And Jimmy has to navigate around him in the second corner. And even doing so, Jimmy gets a time that's pretty darn good for having to drive around somebody. He comes in at a 20.25. That's right up there with the top times.
Yeah, it's right up there with keeping pace again with Dennis Anderson. The next race right here, though, is Dennis Anderson, obviously, with taking on number 9 qualifier El Toro Loco, a battle of 3 and 9 right here. I got to tell you, the winner has to beat a 20.25 for lane choice right here. Anderson has been faster than that all night, but I can tell you, not by much. Sosa's fastest time has been 0.9 of a second slower than that. So Lupe would have to pick up here and probably get the win of his career to defeat Dennis to get to the final right here. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen. This race is really horribly shot as far as I was concerned. We get close-ups of Digger and Toro, but as Anderson crosses the line, we're told he's the winner without a side shot to prove it. Anderson and Sosa in the close-ups were tight to the cones all the way around. Dennis cuts the faster time and will have lane choice in the final with a 20.09, almost breaking into that 19-second bracket.
He's in the championship race. Will his opponent be either the upstart, Lupe Sosa, having one of his best racing nights ever on speed in El Toro, or will it be the driver who's won 2 World Racing Championships, 3 titles overall, Dennis Anderson, back in the gravedigger? We're about to find out. Both trucks off the line, solid to the first turn.
Wow, Lupe's really hooking up hard in the turns, getting out of the groove.
Has this guy improved as a racer or what? Sosa's hanging in there with the icon of the industry. But Dennis has got him when it gets down to it. Dennis Anderson and the Gravedigger will go into the championship race. Welcome back to Speed TV, Mr. Anderson. Gravedigger and Bounty Hunter are going to be your finalists.
Yeah, I agree here that I don't like the way that this race is edited together because you can't really see what's going on. As Lupe is starting to really get out of shape coming up to the final ramp, they cut quick to Digger going across the line on an ISO shot. I think they should have went to the, the hard camera up top myself. But
there were a few times they'd pan out for each race that was really close and they'd show you the finish, and they just don't do that here.
So I don't know if the camera guy messed up that they couldn't use that shot. Or what happened, but Lupe rocks up on he rides two wheels up the ramp, which is impressive, and the truck doesn't get that far out of shape. So good to see him hold on. Dennis, the truck does a little bit of the same thing it did last round, lands on that left rear, doesn't quite get as out of shape this time, but still gathers it up, and he is going to the finals.
Yeah, second straight race for Dennis where he's landed and left rear tire is hiked up across the finish line. Also, by the way, Digger 20 looks phenomenal, by the way. Just wanted to say that. I don't know if I'd said that yet in the podcast. We cut to Dennis, and he says it's not the first time, and it won't be the last time that he's raced Jimmy Creighton right here. This is a World Finals rematch from the finals of the championship race at World Finals 7. And I got to tell you, everybody at World Finals 7 had Jimmy Creighton penciled in as the winner that night. Nobody expected Dennis Anderson to come from behind and steal that victory by about a half a truck length and keep Jimmy Creighton's losing streak in Vegas alive. And that lasted until the year 2019 for Jimmy Creighton. He finally gets that World Racing Championship. All they needed to do was move the show from Vegas to Orlando for it to happen.
Yeah, never did get the World Finals win in Vegas, but they go to Orlando and he gets the job done. And we see Shara here talking to Dennis after the run, and Dennis is already excited. He gets to go an extra lap for the finals.
Yeah, Dennis drops a bombshell on you right there. We're doing an extra lap for the finals. Monster Jam did this in, I believe, all stadium shows for the year 2008. And they never did it again. Can you take a guess of a reason why? I was also at the show that they stopped doing this.
Because they hate giving the fans the entertainment they deserve?
No, they took it away because Tom Mintz forgot there was a second lap.
Oh, he did the old Mark Martin treatment.
Yeah, Tom forgot there was a second lap in Indianapolis. Had the race handily won over John Seesock. Is the only race that Seesock won in 2008, other than the World Finals. Hey, y'all, looking back and editing, I actually messed up on the year here. It was actually 2009 that they stopped doing this for Monster Jam and doing the extra lap. But here's a clip from that Indy show that I was speaking about.
Along with that, John is the reigning world champion right now, so he's on the hot. Tom admittedly has been having problems all year long.
Championship race is underway. Both trucks look good. Now remember, Mintz has looked good at times all year, but been struggling, and he's behind Batman.
Let's keep in mind, this is the final race. We've added an extra lap. Oh, no, look at Seesock.
Seesock's in trouble, but again, he's got time to make it up because we've added an extra lap to the finals. 2 more hits around the cars. Tom Mintz in control, though, as Mintz opens up on John Seesock. Now, Tom looks like he's slowed down. I can't keep up with what's going on the racetrack. They're all over the place. Now Max rolls back, but he's given up that lead. He had a huge lead. He gives it up.
Tom thinks this race is over.
It's not over. Tom's freestyling.
Tom thinks this race is over. He thinks he has won this race. He's forgotten about the extra lap for the final round.
But he didn't win. John Seesock is coming across the line, and he has just won it. That may be the craziest race I have ever seen. It appears that Tom Mintz forgot they added a lap.
I think that they need to bring this back. They would do this at Rocky Mountain Raceway on the big figure 8. They'd go an extra lap in the finals. I think it adds a big bunch of suspense and, really helps keep the racing competitive and puts a little bit more of the focus on racing instead of being something that they just get through in order to get to freestyle. It helps build a lot of drama knowing that if somebody makes a mistake, they've got a little bit more chance to make it up. And I'd love to see it. I think on like a St. Louis style track, it's an awesome option because, you're already coming through. You need to set up and do another lap. Brian Manson, if you're listening out there, I want 2 laps in Charlotte next year for the finals, like 2.5 minute run.
This is where we're going to disagree. I think this is dumb. I think this is one of the stupidest things that you could drop on a television broadcast right at the very end of it. Oh, hey, by the way, all that racing you just saw where they were doing 2 laps, well, now we're going to add an extra one just because. They don't tell you that at the beginning of the show. You're not expecting it, and then all of a sudden, we're going to drop this on you. They did that in the stadium shows as well. I can attest to it. I was at 2 of them this year in 2008, and that was Indy and St. Louis. Like I said, Tom forgot in Indy that there was an extra lap, started freestyling, and John Seesock took the win. It was the only other racing bracket in a stadium, I believe, that he won on the entire year, and I believe they televised that as well. So sorry, Tom.
So what you're saying is you're anti more racing.
I'm anti extra lap when you've already done racing a certain way the entire night. If you want to add an extra lap, do it the entire night. That's my opinion. To me, this is the equivalent of throwing a white flag in a NASCAR race, but then they have to hit a cone, turn around, and go backwards around the track for the last lap.
Yeah, the Joker lane. I think we need it.
Again, the search for the co-host for the Retro Monster Truck Review continues. You can cast your votes now. I'm just kidding. Like I said, I'm not a giant fan of this. Is it interesting? Yes. Does it add an extra element? Yes. Did I agree with them just dropping that bomb? Like, 'cause this is something that you should tell everyone at the beginning of the show. Hey, we're going to do racing bracket this way, and then at the very end, the finals, they're going to do an extra lap. They didn't do that.
Don't act like they didn't cover that in a driver's meeting.
Well, they probably did in the driver's meeting, but they didn't for as far as the casual fans go in the stands. Like Tommy over here with his 3-year-old, he's been trying to pay attention to the entire night, or his 4-year-old off in the corner, he's trying to pay attention. Then all of a sudden, hey, they're going, what the hell are they doing?
So they didn't announce this over the PA that they were doing an extra lap?
They did not announce it until final.
Well, until final. Well, the people got what they needed to know when they needed to know it.
I still disagree with it. I
think
still
that's,
think
that's a big pop for me, man. I'm standing up and cheering if I hear that news.
It wasn't a big pop. We'll put it that way. But like I said, Batman's only stadium racing win in 2008 that I remember came when Mintz forgot there was an extra lap, and that's the reason they quit doing it, to my knowledge anyway. Also, to drop it on a television audience right there is kind of dumb too, in my opinion. You're doing the same thing you just did in the stadium. To me, it's something you announce early on.
I like the swerve myself.
You can hear in the background as we're doing some sponsor plugs as we come back from commercial. We will rock you, and you can truly see that this is a sold-out crowd right here, Matt. You look behind all of these logos, and there is seats filled all the way to the rafters in St. Louis.
I mean, they're in an open seat in the place, and it's a huge crowd. I mean, we're talking probably, a lot of attendance numbers are inflated. This is a big stadium. They've got the retractables up. I'm going to say probably a good 40,000 people in the stadium here.
45,000 in there easily.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the place is full, and they're all getting a good show here for the finals. It's going to be Bounty Hunter versus Gravedigger, and we see a little bit of a recap here of the semis where Tom has his mechanical issues, and they mention as Dennis is running how, the TV cameras have been away from him for a while. Good to see him back on TV, and here he moves to the finals.
I'll say this too. A win is a win as far as I'm concerned. If Jimmy Creighton pulls off this final round victory, he has beaten Blue Thunder, his wife in Scarlet Bandit, Maximum Destruction, and Gravedigger on the same night. And that is something. We get, like you said, we get the recap right here. Anderson will have lane choice. He's been in the same lane all night. For the sake of this podcast, we'll call it the far lane, while Creighton will be in the near lane. If you're watching this or following along with this, you'll see why we're doing that, because Dennis is on the far side and Creighton's on your near side. As far as the far away camera that we have right here. First time that Gravedigger has a bad landing the entire night, though, Matt, is right around that first turn. He comes over the second jump, lands, gets up on 2 wheels, and Dennis has to go all the way to the dumpsters and bumps into Scarlet Bandit to keep going in this race right here.
Yeah, I mean, he absolutely sideswipes the front tire. He got way out of shape, and, this is on the first, lap around. So, Dennis has some time to try to make up the difference, but it's just, he's so far out of shape, so far down into the corner. Again, I'm watching it live here on the video. Sideswipes the Scarlet Bandit. Now Jimmy's got a big lead here as we head into that second lap.
Creighton's got well over a truck length lead. He sees that, but he's not backing off because he knows who that is in the other lane. That's Dennis Anderson, and he can come back on anything. Listen to last week's show if you want to further prove that. Creighton, fourth time by, has about the same length lead as we look into the final turn. Anderson is flat tracking that final turn. He is digging so hard around that final turn. In the end, though, it's a win for Jimmy Creighton and Bounty Hunter by about a truck length here in the St. Louis Stadium, Edward Jones Dome. But in the other lane, Dennis Anderson's having callbacks to the year 2004 in St. Louis. For those that have the Controlled Chaos DVD, you probably saw Dennis's freestyle from St. Louis in 2004. It wasn't televised, but he goes at the very end of that freestyle, sidewall to sidewall to sidewall to save that truck. Dennis is sidewall to almost sidewall right here, trying to get the truck stopped after the finish.
This place is a buzz, the anticipation and the excitement, and you can just feel it as Bounty Hunter and Gravedigger pull to that advanced auto parts starting line. Remember, this championship race will be an extra lap. So when they come by where we've been seeing the finish line all night, they're not done yet. Quick strategy, Mark?
Well, first of all, you really got to keep your head on straight here. That extra lap, you've got to stay smooth all the way through. You've got 2 extra laps, and you know what? There's tens of thousands of seats in this house, and not a single one of them is being used tonight.
First time by, they are dead even. That's going to cost Gravedigger.
See, that's what Dennis was talking about. Right there, he's usually getting after it hard, thinking that's his last lap. That just took him out of this race completely, unless Creighton finishes.
Unless Creighton makes a mistake. The best Dennis could do was slap Creighton's other truck as he busted in the Scarlet Bandit, but he is way behind. Jimmy Creighton will win again in St. Louis as long as he doesn't miss this ramp. No 5-second penalty. Jimmy Creighton and the Bounty Hunter wins it.
Hang on.
Dennis is putting on a freestyle show in racing. Wow.
God, he is every which way but loose. And you know what? My goodness, do you see the time and the track length that he made up from going so deep over there, just about hitting Don Creighton's truck? Man, he was just inches away from taking that win.
I almost called the win too early coming off that last turn because Dennis was flat coming. He did not let up, and he really made up a lot of ground. I thought he was beat totally at this point.
I completely thought he was beat. Here I'm making an idiot out of myself saying, you know, Jimmy Creighton's got this one hands down, and, you know, Dennis is a headlight away from beating
He
him.
even slapped into the Scarlet Bandit, but then he just took off, and he kept reeling and reeling Bounty Hunter in. And as you said, it was just a truck length at the finish. So what a performance from Dennis and Jimmy Creighton. They gave these fans everything they came to see, and you know what? Creighton got the win. He gets the accolades. But here's a runner-up who brought the house to their feet. The fans were just standing, cheering, screaming, because Dennis Anderson gave them everything they wanted to see.
Yeah, the same thing again. He drops that left rear tire over the final ramp, and the truck, kicks over. And this time he's carrying more speed, and boy, he just barely gets that thing saved again. The chassis twists in both directions, fully extends the shocks on the opposite side. He gets it stopped just in time to avoid hitting the wall. And man, a true display of skill and commitment here, running out of room in a hurry that Dennis is able to keep the truck up underneath him.
The replay shows here both of these drivers are coming for home on 2 wheels. They're both hiked up on the 2 left side tires, or excuse me, on the right side tires as they're coming around the corner right here. Phenomenal race it ends up turning out to be. Even with Dennis's mistake, I still think Creighton gets him right here. Creighton was running very tight to those cones. Dennis was a little wild throughout this entire pass. I got to tell you, I think this was Creighton's night from the start. Even though he qualified 6th, he was just he was keeping pace enough that he was putting a little bit of a worry in the back of Dennis's mind. Dennis was running faster times, but Creighton was right there with him the entire night. It was honestly a battle that was going to come down to these two from the start if you looked at the times throughout the night.
Yeah, they were on there. Well, if Tom doesn't have his issues, you throw him into that mix as well. But a true showing of skill by both drivers. Jimmy puts in a crystal clear run, start to finish with the extra lap. And he says, he reiterates he's been fighting the starter issues all night long, but he's got a new camshaft in the truck. He says that made a big difference for him power-wise.
Yes, it's not the same motor that he's had before in Bounty Hunter, but it was fast enough to get him a win here in St. Louis. This is at a time when Jimmy Creighton is running balls to the wall, honestly. This truck is booked close to 52 weekends a year, honestly. Bounty Hunter and Scarlet Bandit, Iron Outlaw, those trucks are always running. It's just never nonstop over there for Jimmy Creighton. So the fact that they're able to come out and do this type of a performance, going out beating the best in the business while also racing almost every weekend of the year, is a testament to the Bounty Hunter team.
And not just racing, they're doing displays for the CSK group, the Checker Chucks and Creighton auto parts stores. They're their big sponsor, got money flowing in. HPI was a sponsor of them at this point as well, the RC company. They had the Bounty Hunter and Scarlet Bandit and Iron Outlaw Wheelie King trucks, which were a lot of fun to play with. And, this is probably, like you said earlier, peak Bounty Hunter in terms of probably the money flowing in. And certainly up there as well in terms of performance. And, it's hard to argue with Jimmy's racing exploits as of late as well. You could call that peak Bounty Hunter, but man, the trucks were just on top of the world at this time.
Yeah, to me, this was Jimmy Creighton's year. 2008 was one of those years that is really fondly looked back as far as if you're a Jimmy Creighton and Bounty Hunter fan. Later on this season, like I said, he goes out with Monster Truck Challenge and just decimates and dominates and wins that championship out there points-wise for the Rich Schaefer ran show. Jimmy Creighton this season, he's actually driving Dawn's truck at this point for Monster Truck Challenge, Shakopee, Minnesota. If you ever get a chance to look up the highlight, I believe it's on Midwest Monsters YouTube channel. Creighton does a slap wheelie around a light pole. The man is just phenomenal behind the wheel. And this event right here, to me, is, like I said earlier, peak Jimmy Creighton. Why? He beat the big three to get his victory. He had to beat Blue Thunder. He had to beat Gravedigger. He had to beat Maximum Destruction. Oh, yeah, and he had to beat his wife.
I'm going to choose a different set of words. I'm going to say he defeated his wife on the racetrack.
That's a good choice of words right there. We'll touch...
We finish up the racing here with the the pitch with the Las Vegas, visit Las Vegas. The city was subsidizing the World Finals, so they're getting the advertising time here on the TV show. And we see those two guys who are definitely Dennis Anderson and Tom Mentz in their fire suits walking down the Vegas Strip. They've both lost about 70 pounds, but obviously it's them.
Well, this was recorded later in the season.
Yeah, with the helmets on. They couldn't have found two scrawnier guys to play the Digger MXD drivers for that little ad, but that's how we end the show. And we come back the next week in freestyle. Scott's standing in between that gap and the bus stack, and you can just see how big those obstacles really are.
Yeah, we're only going to touch on the freestyle here, but I got to tell you, St. Louis over the years, and Scott Douglas has said this many times before, St. Louis is a hotbed as far as the freestyle action goes. And this, like I said, this is like mid-season for Monster Jam, mid-first quarter. And these guys throw it down every single time they come to this building. Why? Because they have a ton of room. They would do the same thing in New Orleans every year. But this particular freestyle, Matt, there were so many awesome saves, great moments, that it's just hard not to talk about them. The first thing that pops into my head as far as the freestyle on this evening was Lupe Sosa. Just jumped right out to it. First hit in freestyle, he almost dumps the truck completely over, has a wicked save off of the racing lane, and then goes on for about a 3-minute freestyle.
Here comes Lupe Sosa, one of the most thrilling performers in the business. And to think that he thinks he added, pull it out, good save. Nice save. To think that he's added 10 feet, he thinks, and again, that's in his mind.
Yeah, and I felt that Lupe should have taken the lead at that point because Bobby Parr, he had a good run, first truck out, and he's still holding on to the lead at this point. But I think Lupe surpasses him easily. The score for Suzuki was a 23. The overall score for Lupe and El Toro was a 20. I don't know. Now, I'll be honest. I think the bonus and the super bonus time, the way that they did it in this season was just awful.
I agree.
I hated every bit of it, the way that they did it. And they didn't even present it correctly on the television because what they were talking about on TV, like as the timer was expiring on TV, it was like 7 or 8 seconds behind the actual clock in the stadium if you catch the glimpses up on the Jumbotron. So they're saying, oh, that jump was at the end of regulation, but in reality it was like 8 seconds into bonus time, which had a separate judge, and then super bonus time. Just make it a 3-minute freestyle, for crying out loud.
Yeah, it was a very hard thing to follow.
Yeah, it was hard to follow for the fan, and it made it to where, the trucks would just get through the first time, and, the guy that had the better overall run a lot of times didn't get as good of a score because of the way that the points were distributed through bonus and super duper double secret probation bonus or whatever they came up with after that. But it was not the way that I would judge freestyle myself. I kind of like the way that they do it now. We had a big discussion on the Facebook groups this week that we were recording this episode about, fan judging, and people think that it's stupid and this and that. And I was like, do y'all not remember how bad it really was back in these days?
Oh yeah, it was bad back then.
I think
honestly,
judgingzone.com is the way better option.
My argument to that, as far as freestyle nowadays, is basically show me a better way to do it, because there is not a better way to do it.
Well, there's no
if
better.
You boo, you're booing yourself.
Yeah,
I'll put it that way.
There's no better way that doesn't involve paying people a salary just to travel around and be a judge, which in an entertainment product, there's no reason to do that.
Exactly.
And it keeps the fans engaged.
It does. It does. It does very well.
People don't understand, it's not just that it's not just a gimmick for, we're going to put it on the fans so they don't have a reason to complain. No, it's keeping people engaged and interested in the live event. You're not getting up to go and, do all these other things or checking your phone and doing other stuff because you have your scorecard up ready to go and you're engaged. I enjoy doing it personally, and I take my voting duty very seriously when I'm at a Monster Jam event, and I vote accordingly. So, the people that think it's just a big scam, including some independent owners, we're not going to get into that. It's legit. It is what it is.
I can tell you 100% is legit, because I ran the judgeszone.com for the competition manager position that I had. And I got to tell you, it was some of the funnest things in the booth in the 2020 season that we got to do, was when we'd enter the score in and you'd hear the announcer go, and the score for El Toro Loco is, do that dramatic pause, and you'd click it, and whether it was the new leader or it was a couple of points behind, that reaction that you would get from the crowd was astonishing. And it was the funnest thing I got to do the entire time that I was a competition manager for Monster Jam. But anyway, we go back to this freestyle. We go back into this right here. Another run that stood out to me was George Bellhand's run. That save that he has off of the camper, he jumps into the camper, rides the truck into a wheel stand over it. The left side kind of collapses a little bit. The truck comes back down. He bounces it into this wicked save.
They have added a motorhome. You just saw it go through your screen, and George is going to go right for it. Might as well. If it's there, take her out, Georgie.
Oh, man. Easy, George.
Yes.
Way to go. Nice save.
Another wow factor for George, and another reason that he gained some more fans in the St. Louis area because of that hit right there. Doesn't have a good run after that, but that hit still stands out to me. The other thing to point out too, Matt, you mentioned Bobby Parr. That wheel stand that he did in his freestyle, the really long one, that was the winner of Wheelie of the Year that year.
That's 30 seconds. Then if you can continue on, a super bonus of another 30 seconds, you can get up to an additional 5 points in each. So now a perfect score mark would be 40, and Bobby Parr's going for it right off the bat.
I love me a good slap wheelie.
And Bobby Parr could do them out of a paper bag if he really wanted to. The guy knew exactly how to get the truck to bounce and do exactly what he wanted it to do. It helps when you have a quad background too to do the wheel stands. You do those all the time just to show off. So he was pretty good in it in the monster truck as well. What really stands out though, as far as freestyle here, is two things. Number one, the winning freestyle with Dennis Anderson and Gravedigger. Dennis has at one point probably the best double bust hit you're ever going to see. He launches, jumps, and lands perfectly on the down ramp, which is, to every driver out there in the world, is a big pop for them. They're like, oh, he landed on the down ramp. They can't believe that somebody can do that, because usually you go a little bit past it or you miss it just a little bit, and then that can end badly. But for Dennis, it was perfect, up and down, just like you were supposed to do. It was like he meant to do that in the run. There were several hits in here that were just, it looked like they hurt a little bit. But I got to tell you, the save he has in the far corner that ends up breaking that right spindle, I believe it was, right axle shaft, something in there broke for Dennis. But he was in three-wheel drive for a good bit of this run, and he just put on a flat show with the Gravedigger. And I'll never forget my dad, when Dennis pops that save off. My dad's not a very vocal person, and he doesn't get animated very often. But when Dennis pulls that save off, I can audibly hear out of in my right ear, wow! He jumped up out of his seat, couldn't believe it.
Dennis did with his team. Again, you know, there's so many great drivers on the Team Gravedigger lineup that Dennis wanted to get back to some of these places, like the West Coast here in St. Louis, that he hasn't been for several years. But there's a lot of pressure on Dennis. He talks about the email. I mean, it comes in letters, emails, card. When are you coming back here? When are you coming back to this city?
Oh, yeah, it's push-pull. Everybody wants a little piece of his time.
Now let's see how the icon, the man who invented freestyle, has been able to figure out how to adapt with this new bonus system. Nice air right there, and again, he is not overextending early. I think he may be saving a little bit for bonus. 30 seconds left on the clock.
Every single inch of this track.
Good combo. As expected, it's ragged ends for Anderson. Now watch the clock. He'll fill the 90 seconds. Now in the bonus time. This will count for the 90 seconds.
There we go.
He doubled it. He hit the double bus jump. And that counts for the 90 seconds as he goes into bonus time. And his score in regulation matches Bobby Parr. He got a 23 for the regulation. But now the truck is shut down. He needs bonus time to get ahead. As we see, they will let him try to refire the truck. If he can do it, the clock is frozen. And he's got it fired. The clock will not restart until he hits another obstacle.
Yeah, you can see the race official come out there, give him the thumbs up. It's okay to keep on running.
Now, this is the first bonus period he's in right now. He needs to do something to score some points in his first bonus, and he'll take the lead. How about that? Yeah, I think he's going to get some bonus points. Now super bonus time. He's in a spot right here again with the truck shutting down. I think he was shut down by the officials because he was up against the barricade. They'll let him refire. They'll freeze the clock again. They'll do this for everybody. More special treatment to Dennis. Dennis Anderson and Gravedigger in super bonus time. Dennis, nice. Listen to this place.
Yeah, he's broke. He's got a left rear axle broke in it, Scott. That landing right there just cost him an axle shaft.
Not stopping.
It's definitely going to slow him down a lot.
What a leap with a broken truck.
Yeah, I mean, it's a quintessential Gravedigger run from Dennis here. And you mentioned him just absolutely greasing the double bus stack. You can't do it any better than that. You said a lot of those hits look like they hurt. I could tell you, having ridden with Dennis, they all hurt, even the little ones. So I don't know how these guys do this for a living. My hat's off to all of them being able to take those kind of hits. The save, again, the double bus shot here. I'm watching right here at the end of, well, they're showing the end of regulation on the screen. It's about 8 seconds into bonus time. The bus jump's just perfect and big bounces everywhere, and the big save to finish it out. You know, it seems like he was always doing that kind of thing in St. Louis.
Yeah, there's actually a video clip of this from somebody on the far side of the stadium that took this on their camera. And I got to tell you, that clip to me is more fun to watch than the TV broadcast, because you can hear Anderson's throttle rhythm the entire time through this entire run. And it still gives me goosebumps watching this freestyle from that angle. We're, of course, watching this back on the Monster Jam subscription, which you can get through their YouTube channel if you want to go check out these older shows. They're on there, and they're very cheap, minimal cost a month. I want to say $4.99, maybe $5.99. I don't remember off the top of my head exactly what the price is, but it's very cheap, and you get a ton of content
It's
go watch.
It's a Starbucks cup of coffee a month, which is well worth it. If you're a monster truck fan, pay for your content, the stuff that's out there that you can buy that's legitimate. Please do support those channels because that's how we get more of it.
Exactly. And the last thing we want to point out here before we get out of here, Matt, Blue Thunder comes back for freestyle, and probably at this point, one of the times where you're just sitting back and your jaw is on the floor wondering how they got this truck back together, especially from the clip we saw in the racing show of that truck just completely disassembled from front axle to back axle.
I mean, they were down to the minute, I'm thinking, on this. And I hope that they covered this for the live crowd for you guys.
Oh, they did.
Did they? Because,
yes.
I mean, it's a tremendous story, and the drama builds, as they're doing this. And I'm sure they were probably stretching the show, show flow to make sure that they had time to get this done and get it done right. You can see that the rear shocks are a little underdamped. I don't know if they didn't have time. They're probably valve different, but not perfectly set up. But, Tony's able to get around the track just fine. And, boy, he goes out and he is able to put on a show for the fans, which is what everybody wants to see, the triumphant return after a crash like that.
We had a lot more damage. I thought we'd been okay if it wasn't for the ring and pinion was broke out of the front end too, so we ended up having to put a ring and pinion, 4-link bars, shocks on the rear, and we're trying to get her back together right now.
We thought one more. Now we find out there will be 2 more trucks to go. Tony Farrell has Blue Thunder repaired, and the fans were just buzzing when he came back out. I don't think anybody expected to see him back.
I myself cannot believe it. Recognizing the magnitude of the damage that was done in racing, I cannot believe. That's a 3-day repair, and they did it in an hour and 15 minutes.
We pay tribute to these crews all the time because of the amazing things they do. And anymore, I'm not amazed anymore. Unfortunately, you almost expect it because of what these guys do. And also, it's that whole camaraderie back there. That was not just Bill Easterly Jr.
Oh, no.
He had help from every other team and crew chief back there.
Everybody available. And not only that, Tony Farrell had his hands in there as well, but he can go on there, he can jump in that truck and have the confidence to know that piece of equipment is safe, and he can go out there and hammer on it, knowing it's at 100%.
That's the amazing thing. Look at him go. He's hammered right now. Now that's a little tricky right there with all those body panels moving in front of the truck. When he goes into a front obstacle like that motorhome, he's got to watch out for debris flying into the car.
Yeah, there's a little bit less protection, not that much. The front clip was off the truck, but it's a bit disconcerting as a driver. All of a sudden, your truck looks like it's about 4 foot short.
Look at this. He is going to fill the 90 regulation seconds. I think. No. He'll come up 10 seconds short. Listen to the crowd. They appreciate Tony Farrell giving it everything he's got in St. Louis.
Yeah, not just a show. He puts on a pretty good show with Blue Thunder right here. They could not fix the one thing. I believe there's a clip out there on one of the Monster Jam DVDs that's from this show, and it's Bill Easterly Jr., the crew chief, being talked to by Scott Douglas, and you can hear him talking and going over everything that they fixed on this truck. And the one thing that they forgot was self-centering rear steer, and I think that is what flipped the truck over at the end. I think that the rear steer was just a little out of whack, and Tony couldn't get the truck to come back from the save that he had going on, and the weird bounce that he took over the car stack. But I got to tell you, though, kudos to every one of those guys that was helping, even the fleet driver that was helping them at one point to get that truck back out there. Anybody that turned a wrench on that, phenomenal job. I can put that up there with just a couple of years ago, when Tom Mintz blew a motor in qualifying and they got that truck back out, replaced a motor in time for freestyle. That is just an astonishing repair that they've done, and it is a legendary repair that still goes down and is still talked about by crew guys, by fans to this day.
Yeah, I mean, we talked 25 years ago, to replace an engine was an all-night job, for 4 guys. And now they're able to do this stuff in under an hour. They can do transmissions in 15, 20 minutes. It's truly amazing between the design of the components, the design of the trucks to make them that serviceable, as well as the dedication and the training that these techs have to be able to keep the show going and give the fans what they came and they paid for. This is why we have specialized positions in Monster Jam. People say that, the drivers should work on the trucks, and it's a great if they can, but the people that work on these things, that is their true special job that they do. They know those trucks inside and out, and they can do it right fast. That's the important thing. Anybody can cobble something together quick with zip ties and duct tape, but to do the job right and get that truck performing back to 100%, which they have to nowadays to put on a show, I mean, the techs at Monster Jam just do a phenomenal job.
The thing we're going to go out on here, Matt, is the fact that this was the first show since 2004 where Tom Mintz did not win in St. Louis. Mintz has an unfortunate issue in freestyle. Dennis, as we pointed out, jumps, lands on that downside, does it perfectly. Mintz, he jumps, lands, and kind of carries the rear tires down, and when he does, he slams the front into the ground, rips off one of the tires. And I took a fantastic photo of this, by the way, which I'll share on our Retro Monster Truck Review page. Tom's on 3 tires going around, and in the background you can see his other tire rolling away.
Yeah, the old ZF APL 365s couldn't quite hold up to that much force, I guess. The axles that Tom uses are very well reinforced and they perform well, but just couldn't handle the smash down. I mean, basically the ramp shovels the front end of the truck into the ground, and I don't know on any other axle if it would have been able to hold up to that kind of abuse without breaking a spindle or a knuckle or something. He throws it into the bus hard. He kind of not pirouette, he somersaults the truck, does about 3/4 of a front flip from the chassis digging in. He puts on a good show, but it's not enough to win the overall competition due to not filling the clock.
Yep, not enough there for Tom. Dennis Anderson ends up taking the win in freestyle. All around, though, this is, and is still one of the St. Louis show that gets talked about. For a number of years, it was 2004. Then this show happened. It's still talked about to this day as the best St. Louis show. And I couldn't not have this podcast and not talk about it because I was there for it. And I got to tell you, Matt, this was the rowdiest crowd that I ever had to deal with as far as a Monster Jam goes. This show in itself, I talked about earlier, my dad was here. My dad hasn't been to a show since. Not because this show doesn't live up to the hype. My dad just could not stand the fact of driving out of that place. He did not want to have to deal with the 45,000 people in the traffic to try to get out of that place. And that's exactly why he doesn't go to shows with me anymore.
I could imagine, man, a sold out crowd like that in a big venue, and you're in the city center there in St. Louis. The logistics make it awfully difficult to get everybody out of a place like that all at one time. And, this is a phenomenal show overall. Good racing, great competition, some wild moments, and then freestyle. This is where we're getting to what I'm going to call peak Monster Jam in terms of where they kept getting bigger and bigger every year. Last week on the Minneapolis show we had a lot of trucks breaking in freestyle early. The Gen 1 Patrick chassis they were still kind of figuring out what they were doing with obstacles and how to build them correctly, so they were consistent for freestyle in 03. By the time we get to 08 here, the Gen 1 Patricks are so reinforced and built up to the point where they're able to take these big hits and handle the axle components, especially, is where a lot of the development was, and the shock technology. These trucks could take the bigger jumps. We're double gapping buses now in this show, and just 5 years later, it's a huge amount of difference. And this is pointing to where the sport, the brand of Monster Jam kind of peaks out. What would you say, around the 2011-12 time frame in terms of like the air, the action, the amount of destruction that they're doing to these trucks every week, and then they start scaling it back a little bit?
Yeah, I would say that the peak era was about 2008 to 2011 as far as Monster Jam goes. These stadium shows, these trucks are so well put together at this point, and we're starting to see new chassis being made and coming in. The CRD chassis is not too far away from being the go-to chassis as far as Monster Jam goes as well, Matt.
Yeah, the development's happening fast, and there's going to be a big paradigm shift in the technology. They've gotten this stuff about as good as they can chassis wise, and then Patrick introduces his next generation, and you've got CRD as well. And now we fast forward another 13 years, and we've got CRD still out there. The metal shop's making some crazy stuff. The trucks at this point in 2008 are probably still under 11,000 pounds. Overall, and now through the amount of safety we've built into these things and all the extra tubing, Monster Jam trucks on the average are up over 13,000 pounds again, and that's mostly just due to the ability to do these multi-show weekends. The components are so strong and so much more tubing to protect the drivers. It's a good thing, that these trucks weigh this much, because it's that much more protection for the people inside them.
Yep, I agree 1,000% right there.
So Joshua, what do you rate this show?
Absolutely no question about it. This show is an 11 out of 10 for me. Loved this show, loved being at this show. The live experience was nothing compared to any other show I had ever been to at that point. It would get beat down the road a little bit as far as some other independent shows that I went to, but this right here, man, being there live, being there with my dad, being there with a bunch of friends and family as well, just made this such a good weekend for me. Great show. Like I said, 11 out of 10.
This was a great show for sure. I mean, I haven't watched this in years, so I probably only watched it the 1 or 2 times right when it aired. Got a good refresher on it doing my notes for this event. A fantastic event, but I'm going to have to rain on your parade a little bit here, my friend. I got on the old Google machine and I did the jazz hands routine on the keyboard of how old is retro, and it says at least 15 to 20 years old. This event is disqualified. No score from Matt Stoltz on this edition of the Retro Monster Truck Review.
Whatever you say. To me, retro is anything over 10 years old. So that's what I've based this off of. That's why we did World Finals 9 not too long ago. This is probably the second most current show that we're going to do. Next time out, we're going to be talking about something completely different, though. We're going to go all the way back to talk about Monster Trucks 2000.
Oh, the new Thrillenium. I can't wait.
Until then, though, everybody, as I always say, keep the rubber side down and the shiny side up. And always remember, the tracks across America, you can never forget them.
Can't forget them, because Dick Leak said so.
I should pipe in the Austin theme song right there at the end. But we'll get hit for copyright. So anyway, goodbye, everybody.
These new trucks are skookum.